All right, so get ready because today we're doing something a little different. We're taking a deep dive into the life of, well, one pretty amazing guy. We're talking Jordi Sierra y Fabra.
And he's got a story.
He does. I mean, you probably know him as this huge name in young adult fiction,
Yeah.
Spanish author. But his path to get there, wow. Talk about the stuff of novels.
It really is more than your typical biography, you know? I mean, what we have here is Sierra Fabra himself talking about his experiences, his values, the things that really pushed him to write so much.
And there is a lot to unpack.
Right.
We're talking about a kid growing up in post-war Barcelona dealing with poverty. Oh, and he had a speech impediment too. Stuttering, actually.
It's true. It makes you think, you know? Like those early years, they could have really limited him, right? It's kind of incredible how those really difficult experiences actually laid the groundwork for his drive.
Yeah, you almost get this sense of him needing to find an escape. And for him, it was stories, right? He loved to read. But think about it. Growing up like that, books, they weren't exactly easy to come by. He talks about basically hunting for anything he could get his hands on. Old newspapers, discarded magazines, anything.
Oh, yeah. He even mentions trading things he found just to scrape together enough to buy, like, a used paperback. It just shows how much stories meant to him even back then.
Okay, so now get this image in your head right. 8-year-old Sierra y Fabra. He's walking, and boom, he walks straight into a glass door.
Ouch.
Right. But it's not just any door. Everyone said it was unbreakable.
Which, of course.
It breaks.
Of course.
Exactly. And that accident, that's what lands him in the hospital. Bandaged up the whole 9 yards. But here's the thing. What does he ask for while he's stuck there? Paper. A pencil. Something to write with.
Wow.
It's like this difficult, painful thing happens, and it sparks this need in him, you know, to create.
It's a great example, I think, of how going through something tough can actually awaken a passion. Like, think about it having to dictate his first novel at 8 years old. That probably really solidified things for him. Like, okay, I'm a writer.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, what if that hadn't happened? Would he still have found his way to writing? But hold on, because it gets even more interesting. So his passion for writing, it just keeps growing, right? And that's when his father steps in.
Yeah, that's a really poignant part of the story, isn't it? I mean, you can practically feel how worried his dad was when he told him no more writing. But it wasn't anger, you know? Sierra Fabra says he was more heartbroken than anything, afraid.
Because he wanted to protect his son.
Yeah, and it speaks a lot about what it was like back then, right? Especially for his dad. Coming from that generation, they'd lived through a war, struggled financially. Like,
Yeah.
a career in the arts. It probably just seemed impossible.
Oh, absolutely. And unfortunately, it wasn't just his father. He had a teacher, too, who wasn't exactly encouraging. There's this anecdote about a story he wrote when he was 12 about E.T., and honestly, even at that age, it's so creative. But you know what happens? He gets a failing grade. And the teacher tells him to, and I quote, focus on getting a real job. Can you imagine? It's heartbreaking, right? These are the people who were supposed to be encouraging him, and instead, it's like they're holding him back. Makes you wonder how many other Sierra y Fabras are out there, you know? People who just gave up because someone told them to. But here's the thing. He didn't. He had this fire in him, and it's actually kind of amazing how music became his way into writing.
It's true. He talks about when the Beatles came along, how it was this huge turning point for him. Think about it, their music, it was all about freedom, right? Rebellion. That really resonated with him, especially with everything he was going through.
And it wasn't just about listening to the music either. He actually used it to learn English.
No kidding.
Yeah. He was working at a record store, and he'd spend hours, and I mean hours, just poring over album liner notes just to teach himself.
Yeah.
Talk about dedication, right?
Yeah. It says a lot about him, doesn't it? That resourcefulness and that incredible memory he has. Because he talks about remembering every little detail, the musicians, the instruments, all of it. It's like, without even realizing it, he was preparing for his future.
Exactly. He was honing his skills, finding his voice. Even if it wasn't fiction yet, he was still writing. And eventually, all of that led him to a really big decision, to just go for it, to become a writer full on.
Which is amazing when you think about it. He had a good job, right? He was a music journalist. He had a family to support. But he still chose to follow his passion. That takes guts.
It really does. And he talks about how he wanted to really live life, you know, to have those experiences so he could put them into his writing. Like he knew he couldn't tell the stories he wanted to tell if he played it safe. And that's where his 5 pillars come in, too.
Right. It wasn't just about writing. It was about actually living those values.
Exactly. It's like he knew he had something special, this gift, and he wanted to share it with the world.
It's pretty incredible. I mean, he could have just focused on his own writing, right? But He went above and beyond to help others, especially young writers, and not just any young writers. He specifically sought out those who maybe didn't have all the opportunities he had.
It was like he was trying to level the playing field, making
Yeah.
sure that everyone had a chance to tell their story no matter where they came from. And he really put his heart into it, too. He even talks about visiting this remote school somewhere in the mountains of Colombia. And there was this one kid,
Oh, yeah.
and the kid, he just got this look on his face, pure joy, just because he was given some books. Sierra I. Faber says it brought him to tears. It's like this really powerful reminder that even something small.
It can make all the difference.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, when I think about Sierra I. Faber's story, that's what really gets me. He never gave up, even when things were tough. He faced those challenges head on, he followed his passions, and in the end, he used his gift to make a real difference.
He really is a great example of how, even when we go through difficult things, those experiences can shape us, push us toward what we're meant to do.
So as we wrap up our deep dive today, I want to leave you with this. What part of Sierra I. Faber's story really stuck with you? Was it his determination? His dedication to writing? Or maybe it was that unwavering belief that giving back is important? Think about your own life, the obstacles you face, the dreams you have. How can you, even in a small way, take inspiration from his story? What will you create? And what kind of impact will you have?